Have you ever stopped to think about what's actually happening behind the scenes when you're online? You know, when you add something to your cart or binge watch a new series? Well, a huge amount of that digital magic is powered by a very special kind of database. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on one of the biggest players out there, Amazon DynamoDB. It's the technology that is quietly running a massive piece of the internet. To really wrap your head around the challenge we're talking about, just picture an event like Amazon's Prime Day. You've got literally millions of people all around the world, all looking at products and all hitting buy now at basically the exact same time. How does a system like that not just completely crash and burn? How does it give every single person a perfectly smooth experience? Well, the answer comes down to a scale that is almost impossible to comprehend. During a peak event like Prime Day, DynamoDB is handling trillions of API calls. And I want to pause on that word. Not millions, not even billions, trillions. That number represents one of the single biggest engineering challenges on the entire planet. And that brings us right to the heart of the problem. You see, the database tools that the early internet was built on, they just weren't designed for this kind of enormous, unpredictable, global-scale demand that we see today. The older traditional databases, what we call relational databases, are powerful, don't get me wrong, but they often struggle to keep up. When you suddenly need to handle millions of users or a massive, unexpected spike in traffic, they can become incredibly complicated and expensive to manage. Your developers can end up spending more time just keeping the database running than building cool new features for you.
So this huge challenge forced a whole new way of thinking. The old model, with its rigid, table-based structure, started to give way to the much more flexible and scalable model of NoSQL databases. And DynamoDB is a perfect example of a NoSQL database that was built from the ground up to solve exactly these kinds of scaling problems.
So what is DynamoDB, really? Well, it was launched back in 2012, and it was basically Amazon's answer to its own scaling nightmares. At its core, it's a serverless, NoSQL, fully managed database. Now, I know those sound like a bunch of buzzwords, but they actually represent three really key ideas that make this thing so powerful. Let's break them down real quick. First up, serverless. Now, this doesn't mean there are no servers. Of course there are. What it means is that you don't have to worry about them at all. There's no provisioning servers, no patching them, no managing them. The database just works, and it scales up and down automatically to meet whatever demand is hitting it in that exact second. And the biggest benefit of that? You only pay for what you actually use. If your application isn't getting any traffic, your costs can literally drop to zero. You're not paying for a bunch of expensive servers to just sit around doing nothing. For businesses, that is an absolute game changer. Okay, next up, NoSQL. Unlike those traditional databases with their super rigid, predefined structures, NoSQL databases are all about flexibility. They can handle data in all sorts of different shapes and sizes, like simple key-value pairs or really complex documents. It's just a much better fit for the way modern applications work. So what's the real payoff of all that flexibility? It all comes down to speed and scale. This model is what allows DynamoDB to power a huge range of different applications, everything from gaming leaderboards to financial systems, all without ever slowing down. And finally, the third piece, fully managed. This is what ties it all together. Being fully managed means DynamoDB takes care of all the tedious but absolutely critical background tasks. We're talking setup, backups, software patches, and just making sure the system is always up and running. And the impact of this is huge. It means developers can stop worrying about all that database maintenance, all that digital plumbing, and instead focus their time on what really matters, building amazing features for their customers. It lets them focus on innovation, not infrastructure. All of this leads to DynamoDB's core promise, and this is a big one. This is straight from their documentation. Consistent single-digit millisecond performance at any scale. Think about what that means. Whether you have 10 users or 100 million users, the goal is for the database to respond in just a few milliseconds. That consistency is what makes an application feel fast and responsive. Okay, so we've covered what DynamoDB is and how it works. But who's actually using it? Let's take a look at some real-world examples of how this technology is powering the apps that many of us use every single day. The list of applications is incredibly diverse. You'll find DynamoDB right at the heart of major financial service apps like Capital One, it's powering massive online games like Fortnite, and it's serving up content for huge streaming companies like Disney+. And this slide really gets to the why. It's not random. Financial services rely on its support for something called ACID transactions, which is just a fancy way of saying it guarantees your data is always correct, which is kind of non-negotiable when you're dealing with money. Gaming companies need its incredible scalability for things like player data and leaderboards. And streaming services use its raw speed to serve up movie details and watch lists to millions of people at once.
Now, for these kinds of mission-critical apps, just being fast isn't enough. The database also has to be basically bulletproof. It needs to be incredibly reliable, totally secure, and available everywhere. So let's talk about DynamoDB's superpowers.
So right out of the box, by default, your data in DynamoDB is automatically copied across 3 completely separate physical data centers. These are called availability zones. This design makes it incredibly resilient to failures, and it's what allows Amazon to offer a 99.99% availability guarantee. But you can actually take that even further. For global applications, a feature called Global Tables can replicate your data across multiple continents, or what AWS calls regions. This gives you an incredible 99.999% availability and ensures that your users get super fast performance no matter where they are in the world. And of course, security isn't some add-on, it's baked right into the core. Access is controlled through a system called IAM, which gets rid of the need for traditional database passwords. On top of that, all of your data is automatically encrypted the moment it's stored, which helps companies meet even the strictest security and compliance regulations. So when you put this all together, the limitless scale, the consistent, lightning-fast speed, the built-in resilience, and the top-notch security, you really start to see the big picture. This is the foundational technology, the invisible engine that makes our fast, always-on, and secure digital world even possible. And that leaves us with one final thought. DynamoDB was built over a decade ago to solve the problem of internet scale as it existed then. But as we rocket towards a future filled with AI, billions more connected devices, and an ever-increasing demand for real-time data,